Oh look, it's another one of those Final Fantasy sequels. Time was when the thought of a direct continuation of an FF title was looked upon simultaneously as long overdue and an unacceptable blasphemy. But that was then. Since then, we've had an After Years, a Revenant Wings, and all the crap that 7 exploded into. So Final Fantasy XIII-2 shouldn't be all that remarkable, should it? After all, it's a continuation of the most reviled and divisive entry in the series since, well, depending on who you ask, all of them. The power to defy this backslide comes courtesy of a small word with a lot of potential: retcon. Retroactive Continuity. He who controls the present controls the past, and he who wrote the script controls everything. 13 struck many as a Final Fantasy devoid of, well, for lack of a better term, Final Fantasy-ness. There were chocobos, countless hours deep in the game. There were mobs with familiar names, even if they were rarely in a recognizable form. There were crystals freaking everywhere, but it didn't seem at all congruous to its namesake. 13-2 sets out to change that by its own example. This is 13 remade as an actual Final Fantasy, and it's so much the better for it. Sarah, sister of 13's protagonist Lightning, has had a nagging feeling for the 3 years since the events of the previous game. Something's just not right. There's an incongruity between what she, and everyone who actually finished 13, remembers, and what seems to be the situation she's currently experiencing. Turns out that Cataclysmic Showdown blasted a hole in the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff holding the world together, creating localized paradoxes where anything can happen and usually does, and also huge freaking monsters. Fortunately, you're joined by Noel, who's been charged by Lightning herself with delivering Sarah to Valhalla, because she uses Odin. Get it?
Can you fight?
If I have to?
You're gonna have to.
To do so, well, fire up your flux capacitor and put on some Huey Lewis, because we're going back in time. The only way to get to Valhalla is to bounce through space-time, solving paradoxes and generally ironing out the wrinkles in time on their way to yet another climactic showdown. Along the way, you run into plenty of familiar faces, a casino at the end of time, take that Douglas Adams, a massive number of side quests, and the same young girl over and over and over again. I don't know if it's just because I've replayed Final Fantasy VIII so recently, but these mechanics and the motivations behind them just feel reasonable. This is a game that seeks to correct the mistakes of its predecessor, and I feel it does an admirable job. Your primary antagonist is not only sympathetic, but believable. Your protagonists are generally optimistic and likable, and when doubt or anger sets in, they themselves understand the situation enough to call themselves out on it. The world shatters the notion of the corridor-based hyperlinear Final Fantasy XIII style by making maps wider and making the entire game more sandboxy. You can get to the end game with only about a quarter of the game's 160 fragments, meaning there's plenty of breadth to the game, even before DLC gets involved. That's another matter entirely. Mechanically, the experience is much like 13 in that the traditional Final Fantasy jobs are replaced by roles organized into paradigms. There being only 2 party members, though, means that the third position in each fight is filled by a monster you've subjugated and developed through a unique Crystarium system using bits and pieces dropped from other monsters. Or you can just make the monsters eat each other. That works too. And each one has its own role just like your characters. Also, you may have seen what looks like quick-time events in certain cutscenes. These are actually rebranded as cinematic events, and while failure doesn't actually change the outcome, success can net you some shiny things to put on your monster.
Paradox shield. You forget to restock? No bonus for you this month.
This is the Final Fantasy that 13 could have been. Since our current paradigm cannot alter the past without stepping on Orwell's toes, we needed to have an entirely new game, one that attempts to undo the transgressions of its predecessor. It succeeds in most aspects, but some are still debatable. Just listen to Crazy Chocobo if you need a new divisive issue to argue. If Final Fantasy X-2 is the Charlie's Angels of the series, 13-2 is Square's answer to Doctor Who. I'm sure Amano's on board with the concept of a scarf that epic.